so. Yeah.
Page number 9. Oh, sure. Might as well start.
Food grains or factories. Anad bhavanti bhutani. Food grains or nuts and bolts. Krishna does not say, take to industry. Self-sufficiency ends food price inflation. Come live on our farm, produce your food, chant Hare Krishna. Pushta Krishna. Sometimes the argument is put forward that in places where there is not sufficient food and shelter and things like this, these problems should be solved first before the problem of spiritual life. Prabhupada, yes, why don't you solve? There are so many land. Come here and grow food, grow fruit. That is the desire of Krishna. Anad bhavanti bhutani. Bhagavad Gita 3:14. All living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Produce food and eat insufficiently. Be strong and chant Hare Krishna. That is our philosophy. Why you are producing bolts and nuts, tire and tubes? Eat, rascal. They do not know that first of all you must eat. No, everyone is engaged in industry. Why? Krishna does not say that you produce foodstuff. Krishna does not say that take to industry. Krishna says produce foodstuff. Annad bhavanti bhutani. If you produce foodstuff, then both your animals, yourself will be happy, becoming strong. Why do they manufacture other things? All these people are engaged in manufacturing and nobody is growing food. Therefore, the price of food grain is rising. Suppose I am growing food and you are not growing, so you have to purchase from me. I'll ask, you have to pay this price, and you have to pay. And if you grow your own food, there is no such question. The simple economic problem solution this rascal cannot take. If you grow your own food, I grow my own, then who is going to purchase? The price will be reduced automatically. If you have no customer, then you have to reduce your price. But they do not understand even the simple thing that God has given us enough land to produce food grains, and we must eat. They do not understand this. And still they are scientist, philosopher, politician. Just see. That is the difficulty. All rascals, fools. They are leading the whole human society. Rameshwar. They're too busy making money to grow their own food. Prabhupada. So then pay more money. Come on. You have earned money and give me. I shall give you food. And whatever I shall ask, you have to pay. This simple thing, more demand, price is more. Then why do you gripe? Oh, everything is price growing, price growing. Why it will not? If I have got food, and you have to purchase, and I have got so many customers, I must increase.
This is, when I'm using this app even, where I check the soil quality and things like that of properties, they list different soils and they say which is, farmland and which is not farmland. And you'll see that anything they say that's farmland has to be at the most less than a slope of about 10%. If it goes above that, they don't even declare it as farmland. In fact, actually, farmland is if it's lower, even lower, like the slope is like 5-6%, then it's okay. Lower it is, the higher the score. Because according to these people, you can only farm if you use these big machines. And these big machines can only go where the land is absolutely or more or less flat. And so, that's interesting because according to that philosophy, there's only few arable land, like most of the United States wouldn't be considered farmland, except for flatter portions. Let's say, some parts of the southeast, and then the Midwest, the entire Midwest. And and that's interesting because and and other places where they do farms, they really don't grow grains as much. It's all livestock. It's cattle, dairy, whatever other things, chickens, goats, pigs, and all that kind of stuff. And that's interesting because until Srila Prabhupada said that, I also never thought about it. But if humans are able to, if the idea is that if you use traditional methods, you can actually farm almost in a lot more places than you can with modern equipment. For instance, how did people live in mountainous regions in the past, at least even in India and places like that? Because you do terraced farming. You can't do terraced farming with machines. Won't work. It's just not practical. But you can do it with animals. And it takes effort to break the hill and create those terraces. But it doesn't become commercially viable. Although people used to live, entire villages used to live, because otherwise there are many, many ancient villages, even in the Himalayas and other places, where people have lived for a long time. And it wasn't that previously, before they had all these trucks and things like that, bringing all the food and groceries and things like this, it was, people had to grow what they had to grow, because even to go down from the hill down to the plains, it was a big thing. You couldn't transport things like that. So this is, Prabhupada is criticizing that. He says they're all rascals and fools, they're all scientists and these kind of big philosophers, but they don't even have the sense to think that God has given us so much land, there must be some purpose, there should be some use in this land. But they just assume that all land is just useless. And why do they think like that? Because anyway, they declare that the whole universe is empty. And there are all these blobs of planets and earths and all of this is just floating around with no meaning, and then there's comets flying around and there's no meaning to it. There's asteroid belts and all kinds of weird things, and they have no meaning to it other than the fact that there was one explosion and then something, all this just came out of that. So when they have that kind of a philosophy, it directly leads to this. It leads to, they don't have a problem with not thinking how things can be efficient, how everything can be used in Krishna's service, because they just, or God's service, because they just assume that, most of what God's, so even if they believe in God, most of what God created is mostly useless. Versus Srila Prabhupada saying, which to the so-called logical scientist or rational person may seem completely logical and stupid, Prabhupada says that there should be some purpose in all this oil existing inside the earth. Who knows what's going to happen by all their extraction? And maybe this is the reason why the earth fell down into the Garbhodaka ocean, because maybe the oil is what's floating the planets up. This Prabhupada stated. If our so-called scientific-minded devotees can't wrap their heads around it, then they're either going to doubt Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada is spiritually perfect. Materially, he didn't know a lot of things. And he spoke a lot of silly things, stated a lot of silly things. But Prabhupada, his statement is based on the fact that nothing is randomly placed in the world, that there's a purpose to all of these things. And so one may think, well, what about those deserts and other uninhabitable places? Yes, they're not fit for human inhabitation, but then there's enough land where humans can inhabit and produce more than sufficient food for the entire population, and more than the Earth's current population. Well over that, food can be produced. But they're not doing that. Instead, they're producing food for livestock. And they won't even allow the farmers to plant their own seeds, because it's not their seeds. Seeds are owned by Monsanto. So the seeds have a trademark on. This is such demons. They put a trademark on a seed. What's stopping them from putting a trademark on some embryo? It hasn't gone that far, but the science is there. where the science is there. It was called, it was very popular up till World War II, and then they stopped it. It was called eugenics, where you design humans and you curate the type of species you want. And it's possible. It's possible to, because they can also do artificial generation of spermatoza, sperm, that allows to impregnate. So they take living cells from a person's body that eventually mutates into that. It happens naturally in our body, but they can create the artificial laboratory for doing this. And then you create an artificial embryo, and then you're able to sort of create a certain kind of species. That's what they did to the plants, and they put their trademark on it, but it's considered unethical to do it for humans, for, I think, pretty obvious reasons. But the truth is, they do it for
All animals, dogs.
they do it for all the animals. They do it for all the animals, and it's not considered. I mean, like that's how they create high efficiency, or cows that are good for either beef or chickens that are 5 times bigger than they should be, and all of that kind of stuff. To some degree, there is some truth in it. That's even there, even in Vedic culture. There is Vedic eugenics, which is called Varnashram. That's what it is. And the Varnas marry within the same Varna, and then within the Varnas you have sub-Varnas, subcastes, and and then you have Anuloma and Pratiloma. So, Anuloma is where the male is of a higher caste and the female is of a lower caste, and that is accepted, versus when the Varna of the female is higher than that of a male, it's called Pratiloma. So it's explained in the Bhagavatam. This is some form of eugenics, but it's God-given. If you see a particular cow giving a lot of milk, and then there's a bull that's born from that cow, and you want to use that bull to impregnate other cows so that your milk production is good. This is within Krishna's allowed system. But what they're doing, which is through the laboratories and doing all these funny things, where they switch out DNAs and things like this is very demoniac, because it's not done through natural processes. It's trying to play God. And these things are related. They do funny things like that, and then you get funny diseases that come from either these animals or their laboratories or God knows what, and then they have to manufacture more things like vaccines to counteract the funny creations that they did, and it just never ends. I remember even in COVID, I was really shocked. One of the reasons why I was so averse to taking that vaccine was that I realized that they needed the blood of a clamshell, crab shell, some crab that's found within the ocean, and they had to extract the blood from it to make the COVID vaccine. And this is a fact. I mean, it's there. I can produce So they had to extract all of those poor things. They would almost bleed them to death, but apparently they didn't. But some did die. So it's very weird. It's like, from where they get this kind of intelligence, that they have to extract the blood of some spider inside the ocean, inject that into the human beings to cure some. Krishna didn't design us to live like this. He didn't design us like, if we have a problem, there's something that we can consume, like herbs and natural food items, or exercise or something like that, or Yeah, for instance, even things like bathing in warm water springs, these are things that humans can naturally
Sleep
do
in the sun, you.
with your yeah, or sunbathing, whatever. These are things that humans can naturally
That's
do.
why.
Without modern science, how in the wide world would you extract the blue blood of the blood's literally blue? I was like, man, this is like, what's that movie that's
Call it cold-blooded.
cold blooded? It's, that's one of these sci-fi movies where the aliens
Aliens
had,
versus predators.
yeah, I think that's what it was. It had blue
I know.
blue blood, and so so it's like it's blue blood. I was like, man, this is so demoniac,
With the Smurfs.
and
Interesting thing Prabhupada's saying here, there's so many land, come here, grow food, grow fruit. I recently saw a little thing. Actually, owning a farm is becoming like a homestead is a luxury now. Because if you want to own even 10, 11 acres of land, to go buy the land, and the land is like whatever, if you want a decent piece of land, it's a good amount of money, and then you got to build a house on that land, and then that costs more money, and then you got to buy tractors and this and that, and you end up in debt about $1 million. So you go and try to grow your own food, but you got $1 million in debt. So the society's made it that actually they make it almost impossible to get out of the city and go onto the land to be able to grow your own food and live. It's just it's a whole system that they've created in which you can't escape. And then giving no knowledge of farming, no knowledge of where food comes from, everything is like a closed system.
yeah, actually, I was reading about how houses can be built properly. The more I realized that the houses they build today is just so much crappy. The thing is, the houses are so bad that if you don't turn on the air conditioning, it's impossible. It's just impossible. It's too, it's very, there's not much, in between yourself and the elements outside. And humans by nature are supposed to have some kind of shelter. You're not supposed to we're not like animals, just supposed to be exposed all the time to the elements. But what happens is you're going to grow up in this environment, and then because that's kind of that's what you see all around you, it is hard, and we don't even, and it's even hard to find people who know how to build in a way that can be naturally cooling, that we just assume that you cannot live like this, you cannot live without it. It's very difficult to imagine. And I'm following a Reddit thread called Off Grid, trying to see what people are saying there, this and that, and in those threads, so one of the people are saying is like, hey, all this off grid sounds nice, but I don't have a lot of money. It's easy to buy some cheap land in the middle of Arkansas. There's nothing there, but they're saying, but I don't know. I don't have the ability to produce what I need to produce. But the land is pretty cheap because it's in the middle of nowhere. But there's no supermarket. There's nothing. There's no power, and they have to build their house and they have to do all this, and it just seems completely insurmountable. And they said, I like the idea and I want to work, but I just can't do it. And meanwhile, they're stuck in a miserable life in the city, which they don't really like. And then they're thinking, can I be an expat in some country where it's cheap, but I can also, where it's not like, where I can still live without having to learn another language or something like that. It's just difficult. It's difficult to see how things work. So.
So many people I've seen so many stories of people that leave America like that, and then they're like, this is so much better, like I'm way happier, it's way cheaper to live, you get way more amenities for what you're paying for, and they're like, wow, I'll never go back to America after experiencing this, and just like, yeah.
And then they managed to stay?
I don't know. I've just seen a lot of good reviews.
Saved up $2,000 and moved to Mexico. Now
Well, you know, the
almost
Mexic, anyways, in lieu of all these ultra-nationalist movements going around, the Mexico had a huge, Mexico City primarily, had a lot of like violent protests against Americans coming and living in Mexico. Because the Americans were coming and living in Mexico, raising all the prices up. And for them it's cheap, but for the locals it became more expensive. And so the locals were fried out, saying that the Americans are coming and making our life hell. And they wanted the Americans to leave. They have a word there for Americans.
Gringo.
Huh? Gringo? That's what it is? Uh-huh. Yeah, I read something. I don't remember. Yeah.
That's also the case in like places like Hawaii. Also, like tourism takes over in natural places where a lot of food can grow. A place like Hawaii, where there's is like fully, it's tropical. You can grow all year round, but
Some place that actually sounds still attractive and still where everything is cheap and the weather is really good and it's not overtaken by tourism yet.
where is that?
Guyana.
Miami.
Guyana, Suriname. Guyana is still English. You still speak English and survive. And it's tropical, and it's even though it's tropical, one is it never gets hurricanes, even though it's coastal, because all the hurricanes kind of
Too
go
loud.
up.
It was really loud.
Yeah,
It's good.
you could reduce this.
It's good.
This is loud. You could. It doesn't have hurricanes, and I was even looking, and I mean, when Rancho Prabhu said it, I was like, really, it's that good? And I looked up the weather. It is good. It doesn't get too hot, doesn't get cold at all because it's tropical, but somehow it doesn't get too hot. It's not like Brazil, where the Amazonian rainforest and all the crazy creatures are not there. But now they discovered oil, and Venezuela wants the oil.
The war.
And Uncle Sam's ready to go to war with Venezuela. Ha 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 ha. We've never seen that before. So, anyways.
I don't think they have a chance. Huh? They ain't gonna be like Iraq.
They're gearing up. Yep.
Venezuela ain't got nothing though, right?
Huh? It's got a lot of oil.
Yeah, but
A lot
military-wise.
of oil. Huh?
Military-wise.
The point is, you don't touch Uncle Sam's oil. So, that's all. So they discovered a ton of oil deposits in Guyana. The funny thing is, half of Guyana was always claimed by Venezuela, but they never cared. But then they just recently, during COVID, they found these oil deposits. Tons of them, so much, just off the coast of Guyana, within the Guyanese international waters. And then Venezuela got a little active, saying we've always been claiming that territory, now it really belongs to us. But then some people who didn't care before now started to care. I wonder why. So.
Yeah, in this point, yesterday we were at Costco, and we're in the fruit section, and looking at some blueberries, and it was one pack of organic blueberries for $9.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we went to the Wuju Prabhu's place. It was you and me, and we picked all those blueberries. Remember that?
It is off season.
Huh?
It's off season right now.
Oh, the blueberries are off season. That's
Yeah.
why. That's why it costs so much.
Well, I don't know, but I would
think it's
assume
always-
so.
It's always that much. I'm pretty sure blueberries are like
Because
expensive.
if it's off season in the U.S., they have to bring it from somewhere else, right? Where it's in season.
Yeah, but it's like crazy. Just whatever from nature you get so much, but then you go to a store and you want a commodity, and then it's like $9. Like there's somebody, and then we went to that farm thing, and somebody was getting paid $12 an hour to stand there. It's like most of your salary per hour. You buy one little thing. And blueberries is how much you get. You just get a handful. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to continue reading.
What you want to react to? With Pushta Krishna? No, next page, okay. And where? There? Then you say?
Yeah.
And that is economic theory. More demand, the price is increased. And then you say there's so many problems. We have to solve first. But you have created this problem, rascal, and you must suffer. You have become infected with some disease. Then you must suffer. It is like say, Karanam Guna Sangasya. Due to his association with that material nature, the living entity meets with good and evil amongst various species. The reason is that you have infected some quality of the modes of nature and you must suffer for that. How can you deny it if you have become infected by some disease like cholera, smallpox, and when you are suffering, how can you blame? You have become infected. You must suffer. Nature's law is so strict that as soon as you are infected by a particular type of quality of nature, there are so many, you must suffer for that, or so-called enjoy. There are two things, suffer and enjoy. So you must have to undergo the process. This is nature's process. It's so nice. As soon as you do something, there is reaction and you are bound up. Yajñārtya karma anyatra lokayang karma bandhanaha. Bandhanaha means bound up. Immediately you become bound up. And still, you are thinking independent. The nature's law is so strict. Push to Krishna. But the argument is that the cities are there, and now what can we do? Prabhupada, push to Krishna. The cities are already there. There are millions of people in the cities, Prabhupada. Therefore, we are offering this place. Come here. Why do you not come here and live with us? Then the Krishna conscious movement this is the movement. Then you come here, live with us, and produce your food, produce your milk, be happy, healthy, and chant Hare Krishna. That is our movement. Therefore, we are creating new Vrindavan and farm, and we are trying to purchase. This is our movement, that we give you sufficient food, shelter, health, philosophy, religion, character, everything, purity. Come here. Why don't you come? They come here on the weekdays, and then they fly away, go away. You see, we are giving such a nice room, but they will not live here. They'll go to the hubble bubble of the city. They like to come here. Therefore, they spend so much money for gas and come here. But because they are not accustomed, they go back again. Return ticket. From hell to heaven, and again hell. Return ticket. Come back to hell again, not going back to God.
Prabhupada, hustle and bustle became hubble and bubble. So this is a common problem that our devotees have faced in farms in India, at least. We haven't had farms here, so but Prabhupada is saying it happens, so it must happen. That devotees or people may come to the farm and they like it. Like Prabhupada is saying, they like to come here, so they like it, but then somehow they can't stay, and then they return. And that unfortunately is a problem that won't be only restricted to karmis. It will also be for devotees. That's just an unfortunate reality, because it's difficult to give up conditioning. It's difficult to give up that conditioning. And so, anyways, it's a challenge, as Prabhupada is saying. Therefore, devotees who actually manage to do it will, they're great souls, saints. Any thoughts on how this could be, or any thoughts on this point about return ticket to the city, not being able to live on the farm, or how we can perhaps deal with that?
One thing is, I guess, people already, one situation most people have is that they've already got a house and they're paying for their house and they're in debt, and then they come, they like it, but then they got to go back because they have duties and family, and then you want to stay but your wife doesn't, or your wife wants to stay and you don't, or your children don't like it, and your house, there's no infrastructure for the education of your children, the education, they want a particular type of education. So everybody's conditioned in different ways now in society, and unfortunately, that condition takes some time to take out. Take out. And I'm noticing that, like I was telling you, I was having a call with my brother, and my parents still expect, like, even the newer generations of younger Nepalese people to be exactly the same as the traditional women of 50 years ago. And they have no conception that they can't do it. And so they just get on their case and fry them out instead of understanding that times have changed, and you need to kind of, like, if you want to bring people back to tradition, it has to be a gradual thing in which, because there's a lot of layers that society puts upon us and imposes upon us, and we're completely conditioned by that. So I think it's a gradual step, but there's like only a few that can actually do it, and that's a realistic point of view to take. There will be only a very few that are intelligent enough to kind of just accept the tradition straight away and just dive into it, and then they have to be examples by which others see and gain faith in that, and then slowly take up that. But it's definitely a challenge that people come, but they can't stay because also their situation, like, whoa, I got a lot of debt, I got a house, I got people that are dependent on me.
One of the main reasons also is that you won't have the independence.
Yeah,
it's a big one.
I want my independence.
It's a big one. The independence is a big one.
Whereas traditional culture, this was understood properly. Nature's law, I'm meant to suffer a house like that.
Yeah, that's Prabhupada is saying that, if you have become infected by some disease like cholera, smallpox, and when you are suffering, how can you blame? How you can blame? But people blame. They blame regardless, and even we, right? When devotees, we get mental, we blame so many other things except ourselves. It's something that we all face. So that nature to blame, that's there. That's funny because Prabhupada is giving that as an example to say that, if you've created a problem, you must suffer and you need to deal with this. And, that instead of recognizing that you've created a problem, you are saying, I'm going to solve this problem by creating another problem. So what does it mean? See here, Prabhupada is saying, he's saying, then there are so many problems, we have to solve this. But you have created this problem, rascal, and you must suffer. So, okay, and you must suffer. And then Prabhupada is saying, but therefore we are offering this place. So Prabhupada is, in one sense, offering a solution to the problem. But then when he says, when they see the problem and they're complaining about the problem and they're trying to find solutions, then he's criticizing it. Why? Because the difference is this, that when they have a problem, they blame something else except themselves. And therefore they can never actually solve the problem. It's this victim mentality, that I am the victim of some circumstances. And, things aren't going the way I want it to go, or whatever, and it's causing me suffering, and there's so many problems. And it's because of this, meaning that I'm the victim. And as the victim, as much as I may try to find solutions, I'm not going to find it. But the moment we realize, okay, we are the reason for the problem, then you find the solution to the problem. Because there is solution. But the solution involves reverse engineering the source of the problem, not going the other way. So that's the only way to actually solve problems. That's very interesting because when people face problems, most of the time they don't reverse and okay, I have to take responsibility for this. Once you take responsibility, you realize that there are only certain parameters within which you can act. Beyond that, it becomes sinful because there's Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, there are rules and regulations, God-given rules, and you have to stay within that. And when you don't stay within that, even if you may have been suffering because you had a victim mentality, you only perpetrate the suffering further in your seeking the so-called solution in considering oneself as an innocent victim or semi-innocent. Most, at least devotees won't say they're completely innocent, but semi-innocent. So, yeah.
There's this philosopher named George Bernard Shaw, and he's been
Yeah, he's
one
a
of his,
famous guy.
yeah. One of his quotes is, "Religion is always right. Religion protects us against that great problem which we must all face. Science is always wrong. It is the very artifice of men. Science can never solve one problem without raising 10 more problems."
Well, it seems to me like even in the amongst the Karmi society that children seem to be like their happiness is kind of takes priority. We see that with like this Hillsborough community in Alachua that
Yeah.
devotees move there because of their robust schooling.
Yeah.
And then even when I was in high school growing up, a lot of the decisions depend on like if the kid liked to play sports, he was good at football, the other high school was better, they would move close to that high school, or stuff like that. Yeah. Or yeah, if they want to get accelerated education, they move to a better school in a different county. So they're willing to up and leave their good jobs and all sorts of things. And it would seem maybe our community will attract people, then yeah, the problem getting them to stay, but especially these families that are already open to like homeschooling or like alternative educations, if they see like this place has a really good program for children to grow up, then that could like encourage them to stay.
100%. 100%.
The idea of what a good program is not what Prabhupada needed it to be also nowadays.
Well, I mean, the thing is, what Prabhupada truly envisioned as the Gurukul system, with absolutely no connection to modern syllabus, might not be 100% practical in this country anymore, at least with homeschooling. Some level, you don't have to teach Darwin's theory, for instance, but you may have to teach some compulsory subjects. I personally have a feeling that more devotees, or even devotees, would be open to homeschooling if they were to see some kind of a model. I recently spoke with Vedavyas Priyaprabhu, who moved, and he said he was very happy with his daughter being taught at the homeschool there. I don't know exactly how the system is, but he said that it's really good, and he's very happy with that, with the way she's sort of getting schooled and everything, and they have it now till high school, and he seems pretty content about it. I don't know so much more. I've never really seen what they do there, but he's happy, and he's Indian. So if Indians are okay with homeschooling, and then this Vivek also moved there because of that. So that shows some kind of a shift, because Indians are, in my experience, maybe they're a little better than the Chinese in this regard, but I've never seen them open to homeschooling. They always want, that kind of like, I don't know, what do you call it, rigorous government or institutional education. So they're open to it. That's something. I mean, if some devotees can take up the task, which is where the big challenge is, because if everybody sits around waiting for someone to do it and then complain that the system isn't in place, what it actually requires is some devotees to sort of pioneer that, and which would mean that they would need to they would need to come up with an entire curriculum for homeschooling, just like how Homestead Heritage does it. Their community has grown completely and solely because of homeschooling. entirely because of homeschooling. So it is a huge community. It's a growth driver, but it needs to get done. Yeah.
What I see is that the longevity of a project like this is dependent on whether the children continue after they grow up. How would you like teach like this idea that like the philosophy that like just our Krishna conscious philosophy, like this is not just like some religious thing that you do, it's like a side note, this is like the way of life. Like how do you like instill that into the kids?
Yeah, I mean, you instill it by, I mean, how do they instill that the science is the way to think of everything? Because that's how you're taught. Kids are molded by education, and through vigorous training and arguments, counter arguments, helping children develop their intelligence and properly understand and analyze why we're doing what we're doing, it helps. Now, in spite of that, when they grow up, it is expected that the kids may want, just out of a young desire to explore the world, may sort of go out a little bit. But if they've got proper education and they've been trained properly, most of them will return, as we are seeing. I mean, I have to tell you, we went to this Bruderhof community. They don't even teach anything Christian to the kids. What is it? Just one prayer? Yes. Barely teach anything. They don't have Bible classes for kids. They like at Sunday, like everybody goes to school, the church, including the kids and everything. But the thing is, they said that there just isn't a conversation with either the teachers or any of the family members or the community members that won't involve Jesus. So that's how they think. And we met some of these young guys over there. Casually, this guy was probably like 24, 25 years old. One of the boys who was having lunch. Yes, Chandan Acharya's question. What would you ask him? What's your favorite thing to do, or something like that? And then he said, what is your favorite thing? And his first answer was Jesus. And then he laughed, and then he said, yeah, I like working. But he said that. And 8 to 5, and then what do you do on weekends? Work. They don't have to work, but there's work. And there's this whole thing where even those people is always talking about Jesus. They're really Jesus conscious, actually. And so that's them not even like really systematically like trying to like teach them the Bible or anything like that. I was very surprised. I thought it would have been like pretty rigorous religious education. Nothing. It just shows why the thing is, the Bruderhof have been existing for several generations now. So, the kids can see, yeah, my parents are there, my grandparents are there, everybody's living fine, nobody's lacking anything. And they don't have much independence, but that's how they lived, and they're happy, and I can also be happy, and they just take up to that. And naturally, because it's a faith-based community and the faith is kind of central to everything, they're also just tagging along. It's really powerful. Social dynamics are extremely powerful, which is why that's where Varnashram Dharma is. This whole Varnashram College class, we were primarily talking, almost everything here we're speaking about is social dynamics and economics and things like this, which technically, according to the Bhagavatam, it's all external and needs to be given up and like that. But still, here we are talking about these things because we're trying to create a model where these things can help one be naturally Krishna conscious. Daiva Varnashram. Yes.
Well, I apologize for being late to some of the voice, but I've been like also fascinated at how we can recreate a sustainable Gurukul system. I mean, I've been studying like it seems like in the past there were so many like there was a Gurukul in Australia, there was in Mayapur, Vrindavan, Dallas, and you see that they had a lot of Gurukul projects actually, and it seems like
Well, they had a lot of devotees,
and
and there
they
were a lot of kids.
and they all failed. And it seems like, I mean, I haven't read. I don't know if this is a mood
Mayapur went on.
Mayapur, then we went there. Mayapur is good now. It's not the ideal. Mayapur is we went there. They have.
I
A
mean,
basketball
I'm just
court.
saying that among
but-
everything, that one lasted.
But
There have been scandals.
right. So my question is, after seeing that there were so many gurukuls at one point in time in the movement, and majority of them failed, what can we do, learning from the mistakes of others, to make sure those same mistakes don't happen again? Because some people might say, "Oh, so gurukuls happened before. Just look what happened. Just
Yeah.
look at the gurukuls." So what do we do?
Well, I don't think, at least in the United States, we are actually considering that Gurukul model, which is kind of what I was stating, right? We're not doing that. That Gurukul boarding school, that's not a model that we are considering anymore. It's not because we don't have faith in that model, but it's that legally it's very tricky. Devotees, one of the reasons why Prabhupada wanted to move all the Gurukul boys to Vrindavan was because the Dallas Gurukul was being threatened, because it was an illegal school. It just was illegal. So, and once you establish a school, then people need to have the right education to be teachers, and there's a lot involved. I mean, a lot of things that you need to bring in as a school. So we are not really considering that model. We are at this point we are only considering a model where the children are day schoolers, and that too smaller, so that we don't have to get smaller, meaning it's homeschool, where the regulations are lax, which also means that because of it being smaller, and the way it is, for instance, even at Hillsborough, the parents have a very close eye on what's going on. It's just natural. That's also the purpose of homeschooling, is that there can be group homeschooling, but it's not beyond a certain number, so then you have to split it into smaller groups. But what this also does is the fact that the kids have to go home every day, or they are at home, or it's like, like for instance, how the way the Homestead Heritage does it is they just move it across different people's homes, and they just do the schooling like that. The parents are very much involved. They see what's going on, and everything is happening with their sanction. And in that sense, it's also been a protective environment for the kids. And the parents themselves are mostly the teachers also. So even in our farm communities, there are Gurukul boys who are boarding, but they've sort of really reduced that. There's very few of them in India. Most of the kids are actually from the own village. They just go back home. They'll have lunch at home. They have breakfast at home, and then they come back and then they have a class, and they go back, and like that. And that's very much within the supervision of the parents. And then, I mean, practically all of the scandals with the Gurukul is because of inappropriate dealings with the children. Almost practically all of the scandals. That becomes next to impossible when you have parents involved at such a level. So it's a good, and it's not that it's not traditional. That's how Nimai Pandit, Vishwambar, that's how he learned in day school. So it was kind of already current in the villages in India. So, and besides, you were talking about failure, but I mean, right here, right? I mean, the homeschooling thing in Hillsborough seems to be doing fine. It's going on. So there's actually something that's actually running. And then there's so many Christian models that we can look at. They're all running. So they're all quote unquote successful. So I think there's many good examples that we can take. Yeah, if you look at what devotees did, but that's not the only examples one needs to look at. Mataji said something. Yeah. Just.
I was wondering, so these Birdhoffs, is that how you say it?
Bruderhof.
Bruderhoffs. So these children that you were talking to that grew up in their school systems, did they go for higher education?
Yeah.
Oh, so they went to regular colleges too and then just came back.
A good number of them go, and several don't. It's up to them. But they do. And I mean, there's many interesting points there about how much a good social setup, especially with the parents, how much it actually influences the kids. Yes, when they go out, they go to college, some of them get bewildered and some leave, but most don't leave. The Bruderhof do not discourage their children from pursuing higher education. They don't discourage that. They're not like, for instance, the Amish or others who literally look down. They're fine with it. And in fact, they encourage them, and then a lot of these kids come back and contribute a lot of their professional skills. Because they're not about, the Bruderhofs are not about growing their own food and living simply and all of that kind of stuff. They only live communally. And they run big businesses that the community runs that brings income to maintain themselves. So they're all about opening new businesses to support the community. And so that requires expertise on multiple levels, which they don't like to outsource. So they have professionals on all levels, doctors, accountants, programmers, physicians, nurses, you name it, they have. Quite educated. So it was very interesting. There's other interesting things. It's Varnashram College class, we can bring these things up, because some things here might not be absolutely conclusive. But there are interesting things there that, for instance, there's no arranged marriage. It's the boy and girl have to find each other. But they claim that there's no illicit sex. No divorce also. And it's kind of amazing. And they, in a day and age where they all also have phones. Of course, phones aren't allowed until anyone is 18. 18 and above is when they have phones. Until that, no phones. That's one thing I'm seeing common in many Christian communities. It's a very important thing that they follow, that the kids will not get any type of gadget. It's iPad, iPhone, nothing. So when they interact, they say the habit happens under guidance and counsel, and then they write letters to each other. They have to write letters to each other. Yeah. And they have to write letters to each other. But then those letters are screened by the counselors who are guiding them in their relationship. And they read the letter that they have written to the other person. They tell them, well, maybe you should write it like this. And then they correct them in how they phrase things. They are also allowed to text each other or talk to each other. But, no. So they have, so in that sense, they have like They have a very sort of like a system. I, you know, faith, religious faith, strong religious faith, and stable social dynamics play a massive role in development of children, in conflict resolution, in the overall well-being, mental, physical, spiritual well-being of the community. It plays a huge, huge, huge role. And a lot of our issues are actually, I mean, how many devotees have had issues with the philosophy? I was like, none. Who has an issue with the philosophy? I don't know. I don't know about, Vishnu being supreme. I think it should be Lord Shiva. I'm having an issue with this. Or I'm having an issue that you're all chanting the holy name and not performing fire yagyas. No. Think about it. Think about any of the issues. Think about the issues that we have within this temple. Absolutely social. Almost all social issues. So when you take that out, even if your philosophy is pretty weak, life in the material world doesn't look so bad. That's the kind of maya that happens when you have the mode of goodness prevalent and everything feels good. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that everything should be hellish as it is sort of right now, because we may be devotees and we're performing things that they can't even imagine doing, but we experience problems that they don't even think about. And they're meat eaters, beef eaters, They drink, or booze flows pretty freely in the brutal house community. We didn't see it, but because we went at a time when that doesn't really happen. But so it's very telling. Okay. All right. Anything else? Yes, Mataji.
I had a question about the area where you guys are considering the farm. Like, are there other people farming in that area?
No.
Like edibles? No. And is there like a farmer's market or anything in that area at all?
We're only half hour from the city. There's plenty of farmers markets.
Ah, okay. And then I had a question: if you guys were gonna leave all the fruit trees and stuff here, all the edible stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, transplanting them is an expensive. And I mean, how would you transplant? These are huge. Huh? Jita Girish wanted to do it, but even he said I mean, I never asked you about it, but you sort of mentioned it on the side that it's not very practical.
Yeah, I tried to do that before I killed
Yeah, the thing is, trees aren't really meant to be transplanted. Once they're planted, they're there, and they might not even survive the shock. And in the name of trying to protect them, we might actually end up killing them.
It might, if it's, I mean, once like those peach trees, they're probably too big. But there's like big trees or smaller things we could probably transplant.
Maybe.
The price of, I mean, it's like, I would have paid like $40 per tree, so it might even be worth it to transplant them.
Maybe. We're not technically or morally responsible to transplant trees. We're just not supposed to kill them. Once it transfers owner's hands, it's kind of their responsibility. It's not like Tulasi Maharani, who we have to care like a deity. Trees are trees.
No, I'm just thinking in terms of like it takes a long time to grow peach or like, rosemary or something.
Well, what if you kill it in the process? Then it becomes sinful. Well, like the peach.
Yeah, I think that's.
So why not, we actually found a pretty good farm. We found a farm in Gainesville, Georgia. and it had like I think was it 1,000? It was like practically it was 60 acres, practically filled with peach trees and then pomegranates and then I mean and these peaches are producing like crazy, but it was so many peach trees that you can't do anything because we need to do other things on the farm and we solely rejected that property. It had 3 houses on it and it had all these peach trees. It was ready as a fruit orchard, but it has too many peach trees and you can't kill them because they're pious trees, and if you kill them, then you incur sin. Huh? Oh. Okay. Anything more? Okay. All right. Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo.